Hello and welcome to the Practical Leadership Podcast, where I interview great leaders and try to extract their wisdom and experience for you to learn from and hopefully avoid making their mistakes. Check out practical-leadership.academy because you want to help your new managers succeed with hybrid or remote working. Faris Aranki, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Paul, thanks for receiving me. Is that right?
Well, I'll be received anywhere you like. It's just like being the receiving line at Her Majesty. Thank you. Well, His Majesty now, yes. Nice to meet you there, Faris. Very nice to meet you. Would you introduce yourself, please?
I would love to. Hello to all of Paul's listeners and this fantastic podcast. I'm Faris Aranki. I'm the CEO of a company called Shiageto Consulting, which is a small, innovative consulting firm which does strategy and emotional intelligence. Basically, we get teams working better together and buying into the same idea so you can actually deliver on your strategy. Loads of fun, but I've got quite a journey to get here, which has involved working as a strategy consultant for multiple years, working in the energy industry before that. And a long time ago, Paul, I started as a high school teacher, teaching the two glamorous subjects of maths and economics around the world. So hopefully that will give me a range of stories to share with you today.
I think that's a decent foundation. That's definitely a decent foundation. I mean, Centrica, Ernst & Young, Beringa, and yes, I mean, where else do you want to go from?
Yeah, certainly. Plenty of company experiences and different companies, but also when you're a consultant, you go in and out of organizations. So
That's the thing.
Absorb a lot of information. That's one of the reasons I love it. And you unashamedly borrow good techniques and learn about bad techniques so that you don't recreate them. So I like to think I'm a walking encyclopedia of good and bad management practices.
Well, there's the good artists borrow, great artists steal. I'm an unashamed thief of other people's good ideas, with credit, of course, where you can remember where you found it.
Of course.
Absolutely. And in terms of the bad practices, oh my God, I mean, I've always thought that there is a trail of destruction left behind, well, me in particular, but every bad manager out there. A trail of destruction, all these people that you were experimenting on unwittingly and unknowingly over the time, trying stuff out. What was the point in your illustrious career where you first ended up being a manager? Manager of people?
It depends how you define manager.
Go on then, you do it. This is the thing.
If I'm honest, when you asked me that question earlier in our prep call, I was like, it's probably going to be when I transitioned at Centrica into managing a team of call center agents. At Centrica, they had a fantastic thing where you had to work on the shop floor at some point early on in your career. And before you got into sort of more cerebral jobs. And so I transitioned from being a call center agent into running a team of 20 agents. And that was a baptism of fire. Paul, I remember my first meeting, I did one-to-ones with everyone in the team. And there was this older chap who'd been a call center agent for 30 years, whose opening sentence to me involved multiple swear words, which and along the lines of, "What the hell have you got to teach me? You're not even old enough to shave." So it was a very tough confrontational to inspire, motivate, and lead those people. But actually, the reason I reflected is, do you know what? The reason I could handle that conversation was because for 5 years I'd spent every day managing 30 little people into learning. And they'd bring their challenges every day. They would bring their reasons they couldn't do their work. They would need motivation, inspiration. So actually being a teacher was fantastic for secretly teaching me how to manage others.
My mum was a teacher for, 35 years, something like that. She retired as a head teacher.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I get into digital learning, and I'm a consummate learner. I call that myself. I like to learn lots of new things. I have huge respect for teachers, given that I've got 2 small children right now, and the amount of crap that they have to go through, the work that is involved in the prep, and they're constant. It's like they're being on stage. I mean, managers, leaders are on stage anyway. You're always performing, not necessarily faking anything. I don't mean that, but you are there as a presence and present, and being present all the time is very tiring. But, well, with 30 little people, Aye, good. What's your biggest takeaway from that? How did you transfer? Well, how would you advise somebody? What would you take away from being a teacher and then advise somebody being a new manager
I think the
connect?
transition. I learned very many valuable lessons as a teacher. One is which transfers as a manager. One was be prepared for anything. Literally, you cannot you cannot think through every scenario that might be presented, and usually they're around emotional and things that are happening to the person. And by the way, you don't have to be an expert at those. As a manager or as a teacher, there's no way I could have dealt with all the challenges that were going on at home because I wasn't trained. But it is about being the first port of call for that and knowing how to get others to come in and help you, or sort of being a signpost to the right sort of sources of help. But a lot of teachers, a lot of early managers think they have to solve every problem, and that can overwhelm you and consume you. And you need to kind of just shift and say, actually, no, I'm just kind of like the switchboard operator that they first call, and I need to know where they can get help. So that was a key lesson because early days I tried to solve every problem and beat myself because there's a lot of stuff that goes on when you have 30 children, each coming from different homes and different challenges. And then another key lesson is, while in your head you want to be the cool, fun, really approachable, lovely person because you think that's who you are, it actually sets you up to be a lot tougher if that is how you come across initially. I was told very early on by one of my fellow teachers who pulled me aside and said, look, you've made a mistake here. You've tried to be the cool young teacher. They're now going to walk all over you because you cannot dial it back to be the tough. He said, you always got to start tough, lay out the rules, and then you can ease up. You can never do it the other way around. So he was almost like, this first year of your teaching career is a write-off because now the kids are just going to trample on. But next year, you have to learn from this. And I think it's the same as a manager. While you want to be everyone's friend, while you want to be everything, you have to lay out the boundaries, the rules of engagement, and then you can ease up. But you have to be very clear and transparent to people what you expect from them.
I was talking to very smart lady, Flo Broderick, fairly recently. She's the CMO at Carto, and she was saying that you go to work to be respected, not necessarily liked or loved.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, is a good way of putting it there. I mean, and the fact that you don't need to know the answers is, as soon as you learn what coaching is, and you discover just how incredibly powerful half a dozen good questions are. And as you said, then signposting people towards resource, signposting people towards other people, and not needing to know the answers. The best part is that you could look, well, I suppose if you want, you could look great, but not knowing the answers.
Yeah.
What to do about this? Well, I don't know. What would you do? What's the situation? Well, it's this. And what would you think? What's stopping you doing that? That. Where do you want to get to? Here. What are your options? That one. Which one do you think you could do first? This one. When are you going to start? Tomorrow. That was wonderful talking to you, Paul. Okay, fair enough. That's it. That's the gig. So if you were to say how to be prepared for anything, how do you prepare yourself for anything? You can't prepare yourself.
Well, you can't. I mean, you can, right? I do a lot of pre-mortems with companies nowadays, which is a pre-mortem is you pick something and I can see you're not, but you pick something and assume it's failed, and then you run through all the reasons it might have failed. So you could do an element of that, but and a healthier bit of that is to be prepared. But what I mean by being prepared is more on your side, your own self-awareness, your own self-preparedness. Like I said, my initial reaction when all these challenges came at me was I must solve all these things, and part of it was addressing why was I reacting like that, and kind of understanding myself and putting in place some techniques to go, actually, that's okay. I don't need to do that. So, so it might be that you really stress out. So how do you calm yourself? Or it might be that you become super frantic. So how do you keep focus? Right. So a lot of that being prepared for anything is actually understanding yourself and applying some self-management. So I think being for early managers, a lot of it is about learning more about yourself as much as it is about managing your team.
Physician, heal thyself, first of all. Yeah. I mean, a lot, I think, of what leads from knowing yourself leads you then into understanding other people. If you really want to understand other people, you have to start with knowing yourself because you are other people. in many ways, shapes, or forms. But you need to do that. You need to build those relationships.
Yeah.
And I think it can take a very long time to build a good enough relationship where you get to the point where you can have those sorts of conversations, or people will come to you. Now, do you think is there a way of building relationships faster?
Oh, 100%. A lot of what I do today is about building relationships very quickly, because companies, teams are far more successful when people are all collaborating, working well, and there's a level of trust. Now, what's the simplest way to build a relationship quicker? It is the fact, find something you have in common with the other person. Really, really simple technique. When two human beings find something they have in common, they are more likely to work well together, or better together, I should say. And it can be anything. So a really quick exercise I do with every team or at the start of every meeting is literally get into a pair, get into a three, and you've got 5 minutes. You have to find the most interesting fun fact that connects the 2, 3, 4 of you. And the team that comes back with the most interesting fact, it can't just be we're all human beings, will win a small prize. Right. So this gets the creative juices going. It gets teams to sit there going, right, what foods do you like? What films do you like? Which countries do you travel to? They literally rattle through in 5 minutes about a week's worth of conversations. And suddenly
Brilliant.
you've got people going, and that will form the conversations after the meeting in coffee groups for the rest of the week. And, you hand out a small box of chocolates or whatever. But the real prize is suddenly you've got 20 people who maybe only knew each other a little bit or not at all, having a whole bunch of conversation starters and reasons to look out for each other and just care a bit more about the other person.
I love that. So find something in common. I mean, that goes to, what's this? It's Robert Cialdini on influence and persuasion. And one of the big things that people like is liking. I want to agree with people who are like me.
Yeah.
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 So this is the social aspect of it. What else could you do to shorten that relationship building time?
So, I mean, these are simple things. So find ways to connect and find joint tasks to work on. The sooner you stop looking at each other in the eyes and you're both looking at the same thing together, the quicker you'll develop a relationship. Right. And I think we all know this. We've all seen this. You think of the job interviews you've been to in the past or things where you start or a first date or something, and it all starts with, oh, who are you? Where are you from? And then suddenly you start talking about, oh, don't you hate it when this happens? And so you move from the eyeballing each other to a shared experience or working on a common thing. So the sooner you can introduce that. And as a manager, what's great is you have the lever to introduce those tasks to your team. Right? So sometimes I call these sometimes speed bumps. I encourage new managers to create small tasks, even if they're not necessary, to bring people together. Right. And it's why people often groan at team bonding sessions, because they're the kind of clunky version of these. But that's why they're effective. And I actually sometimes say to teams, I don't care whether you like or hate this. You will grow closer at the end of it, even if it's just for your shared hate of me and this stupid activity. And they all laugh, and then they'll get to the end. And that's why I have senior executives doing stupid things like kung fu, in fields. I have them singing at the top of their voice, even if they hate it, because I know they will be closer for it after the small task.
Yeah. The singing thing, actually, I think is incredible. I mean, I love my music, and I've been doing amateur dramatics forever, singing and dancing and musical theatre and all that sort of stuff. But I had a wonderful singing coach come to a team event once, and she had us all singing, and we were doing like 3-part harmony. And this is just a random bunch of people that I've hired over the course of a few years. There was 20 of us or something like that. And oh my golly gosh, the bonding, the positivity. And the song was good as well. What was it? So the one they sang at the end of Ghostbusters 2, where the big things anyway, it doesn't really matter. It's this fabulous uplifting song. People would just really, really enjoy doing it. I mean, everyone was getting into it. Even the people who say, oh, I don't sing, I don't do anything. Me.
Yeah.
Everybody's getting into it. But you're right. It's when you have these shared moments.
Yeah.
That's incredibly powerful. Wonderful. I like that. So how do you build a relationship in a day? That's a fast way of doing it. Okay.
Yeah.
Was there an event or a mistake, perhaps, that taught you a lot?
Oh God, yeah, loads of them, and they still happen all the time. But um, do you know what? Yeah, and it depends what kind of learning you think. I've had events where I've screwed up massively, and most of these events are where I failed. I'll be honest with you. Um, I was I was on another podcast. I know you shouldn't talk about another podcast when you're on a podcast, but I was on another podcast recently, Paul, which was called "The 10 Greatest Lessons You've Learned in Your Life."
Hmm.
Initially, I went on this podcast and I thought, I don't have 10 lessons to share. And I started jotting down lessons I'd had in my life. And when I looked down at the piece of paper, there was about 42. And I went, oh, now I have to pick 10 of these. But the common theme between all 42 was they were all when I'd screwed up massively. Oh, something had gone wrong. Not very few of them when were positive, when a massive positive thing had happened and I'd learned from it. And that's the reality of life, right? You trip up, you learn. And actually, I do a lot of training, coaching at the moment, and I actively use this as a way to accelerate learning. Like, I bruise egos very early on. I set tasks that are designed for people to not succeed, so that you pique their interest to actually learn and go, do you know what? Maybe I'm not as good as this as I thought I was. I should pay attention here. And again, I'll be transparent about that, because you'll always get someone go, no, well, I can do this. I can do it. So yeah, I could literally reel off loads of failed activities. So I guess what kind of learning are you after? And I can dig up an experience from my past where I've failed that has given me a learning in that arena.
Do you know what? I think what you just said was actually meat enough. There we are. The idea of putting people in a situation intentionally and with positive intent and with due care and attention to everything else, where they have to work, and then you hook that into the joint task to work on, and you hook that into the finding something in common. There is this theme here that I think is coming out as we talk here, Faris, of getting people to a place where they wouldn't otherwise get on their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And going back even further in our conversation about what makes a good manager and how do you handle things. A lot of it comes from my self-awareness. I really have kind of reflected on what helped me move the dial and get a bit better. And I really put myself in a position whenever I'm designing something, like, how would I feel at this very moment? I'd be, God, this is boring, or good, God, or whatever. And so I use those feelings to get the best out of people, and really redesign things to get to really change the dial for them.
Yeah, I think it's frankly, it's the only way to fly.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you working on at the moment?
So I'm working on some super exciting stuff. What I love about the work that I do is quite varied. So I'm working with a professional services firm on new training programs for their new managers. I am working on a large change program for a drinks company. So how do you get people excited by what is basically an IT change, but is going to impact all their lives, and make sure that they feel positive about it. I am working with a bunch of tough-nosed traders to get them to work better as a team. So it's very varied, but equally, I like having a bit of a portfolio career. So I do a lot of speaker events, and even have the privilege of a friend asking me to write a few chapters of his book. So lot of things that keep me busy. And I guess I'm one of these people that if I have time in my diary, I'll go, oh, I'll do a new project, which is probably a very stupid way of living my life. And my family usually try and talk me down from it.
It keeps you off the streets. It could be dangerous.
It keeps me off the streets. Yeah.
You'll be roaming the local neighbourhood, going, consultant available. Curtains are shutting, the doors are locking as you're walking past. No more change.
Yeah. The child catcher in Chitty Bang Bang was.
That's the one. Lollipops.
Me. Yeah.
Strategic lollipop. Oh, okay, we're taking that one too far.
For younger listeners, that reference is very dated, but don't worry.
What are you reading just now? What do you listen to?
So, a key part of my working days, I have 6 work phases, I call it, and my diary is blocked out. And one of them is absorb new information. So I try and do an hour a day of knowledge absorption. And for me, nowadays, it much more comes from articles, newspapers, and it's quite varied. So I've signed up to a variety of newsletters, and every day I set aside an hour to read different articles, and they are quite varied. Some are business articles, some are psychology newsletters, some are from the world of media, because I don't know what I don't know, and I love a wide variety of knowledge. Because I never know what one piece will be useful. Now, the key is with Absorb is active learning. So not just reading all these things. I've actually got to do something with it. So I'll maybe read 3 articles a day that really resonate. I'll either then summarize them so that they stick, or I'll turn them into a talk, or I'll somehow arrange an activity out of them. But otherwise, they just go in, and I know me, and it's about reinforcing that learning. Yeah, really, really varied sources. So just this morning alone, I've read about aerospace, some new advancements in biomedical, and a bit of crypto world. And now, none of those am I an expert in, but I'm fascinated to learn about. Have a little bit of knowledge in each of those areas.
I love the idea of the active learning because I'm very conscious as well. I mean, I love to read all sorts of stuff like that, and I try for a book a week, and it's a bit much, frankly. It's more like 1 every 2 and a bit, or maybe 3, something like that, because you get other stuff to do. But if you just trawl through something, or you're picking the highlights or whatever, it's pointless. Pointless for me anyway. I try to turn it into either a course or a bullet pointed list or something that I can teach somebody. That's the biggest one for me, is if I can turn it into something I can teach or share in a coaching session with somebody around a topic, and then coach on that framework or that idea. That's how I get it stuck in my head and find it useful. Because what's the bloody point otherwise?
Well, yeah. I mean, you can look back and say I read 52 books this year.
Good for you.
Yeah, well, good for you. Oh, well, I mean, data. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think this is a key part about knowing yourself. A lot of us haven't worked this out yet. Until I was made aware of this, like, what kind of learner are you?
Yes.
There's the three types. Obviously, we all absorb but how do you reinforce that learning? Like you said, it's either you're a doer, so do it 100 times. So if you read a manual on golfing, go and practice your swing 100 times if you're a doer. If you're a speaker, go and explain that technique you just learned to 100 people. And by the time you've explained it and put it in your own words, it will be crystallized in your head. Or if you're a writer, write it down in 100 different ways. And 100 is just a number I picked arbitrarily. Yeah? But you've got to know which of those 3 things really help you crystallize your learning and go and apply it. And a lot of people haven't got that missing step and haven't really thought about it. So knowledge just goes in and then is quickly lost.
Because nobody's ever taught how to learn. No, really, it's a big thing. I mean, I've worked with L&D for years and years, learning and development. And most people in learning development are psychologists or their backgrounds in training and that sort of stuff, and that's great. But one of the things that we always forget to teach people is how to actually learn. Folk have struggled through exams or came through university or whatever. They sit the exam, and my goodness me, I could not tell you a damn thing about Scandinavian children's cinema.
Yeah.
But yes, I do promise you, I sat an exam on it and did very well. It's how to learn. Exactly that point. It's a very good point.
And you were telling me earlier before this podcast about one of your excellent training programs where you've broken it down into bite-sized 25-minute segments. And I love how the balance is 5-10 minutes of learning and then actually applying it or coaching around it, right? Because that should be the balance. Absorb a little, practice a lot. And you think how we're taught at school, it's actually sit and absorb for 2 hours, and then go and do some homework on it on your own without any help or guidance. All right, okay.
And thankfully, at the moment, I mean, there's lots of people talking about how bad our schools are and all that. But thankfully, at the moment, my experience with my kids is that it's very action oriented. It's the bias is for using the thing. They're not sitting there doing "Je suis tu es nous sommes vous êtes." They're actually learning. Hello, my name is, and how about you? Sort of stuff. They're actually doing it.
Yeah.
Hopefully, long may that continue, because my kids are only in junior school just now. They're moving up, I don't see it continuing, unfortunately. I think I can imagine the high school is back to, and this is the table of elements that we will now memorize, name, but that sort of nonsense. Hopefully not, but we'll see. What would you like to thank younger Faris for doing?
Well, I would like to thank him for taking the risks that he took. I wouldn't be here today without putting myself into some uncomfortable positions, which at the time I really was like, why am I doing this? But I now have a mantra, which is run towards the wrecking ball, because I, in hindsight, can look at all the benefits I got from taking that risky step, which at the time, now I wouldn't consider risky, but for 13-year-old me, going and talking to someone who I felt was like, oh my god, my world's gonna end, to 17-year-old me going off traveling around the world and living in a random country and these sort of things. I'm really glad that I took those risks and I'm reaping the benefits today.
Lastly, then, your coordinates. How can people find you?
They can find me by just tossing a coin in the sky. No, just
throwing a dart.
Throw a dart. The best places are come and visit my website, company website, which is www.shiageto.com, and Shiageto is Shiageto. Or the other really great place that I hang out a lot is LinkedIn. So Faris Aranki. Look me up and let's just keep the conversation going there.
Faris Aranki, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you very much, Paul Morton.
That's a wrap. Thank you for joining me today. Your homework is to leave your 5-star review, and please, any comments you have, you really help me to improve every day, and it also helps people to discover me online. You should check out practical-leadership.academy because you want to help your new managers succeed with hybrid or remote working.